Oh,
Hi
that beautiful bean
guys.
footage. Sorry.
It's okay. Do you want me to restart?
No, don't restart. Keep it
Okay.
going.
So we're going
What's
to be
up,
watching
guys? Sorry.
Oversimplified. Is it called football video? I
It's
think.
soccer.
Yeah,
It's
but they call it like
football.
yeah. So
Not some real American football.
right, excusez-moi.
Oh, you got on.
Quick, you have 2 seconds to name these two countries.
Oh wait, can you do it?
You're wrong, unless you got it right. Then good job.
What two countries are them? Central America.
Like Colombia and something.
Guatemala, Honduras, Salvador,
Guatemala.
Costa Rica, Panama. It's Belize, Guatemala, Honduras. It's Honduras and El Salvador.
Oh,
I
okay.
think so.
We'll see if we're. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Of course, Honduras and El Salvador. One thing these two countries have in common is being fanatic about football. Or if you're a freedom-loving patriot, soccer.
Oh wow.
But do they love
America,
it so
baby.
much they would go to war over it? You bet they would, and that is no bueno.
I didn't know he spoke Spanish.
That is no
He
good.
speaks
If you look at these two countries, you might notice one major difference, and that is that this one is a lot bigger than this one. However, this one had a larger population than this one, made up mostly of farmers, and there wasn't enough land for them to live and work on. So they started moving from El Salvador to Honduras in search of land. And by the 1960s, a huge number of illegal immigrants had crossed over the border from El Salvador.
I love it.
Meanwhile, in Honduras, it's 1963, and this guy has just staged a military coup to prevent the rise of communism and is now the military leader of the country. He immediately began harassing the peasants' unions and other left-wing groups, but he's a little insecure about the legitimacy of his leadership. So he holds an election and wins. But then the opposing party says, hey man, that election was clearly corrupt and fraudulent, and also you've been bribed by the rich American banana companies who are taking all of our bananas tax-free, and now our economy is in ruins. And everyone started to get mad at him. Now, if you ever find yourself the barely legitimate military leader of a corrupt Central American country, and you start getting into hot water, here's a bit of advice that has been tried and tested throughout the centuries. Blame something else. So he blamed the Salvadoran immigrants for stealing all the land and all the jobs and ruining Honduras. The immigrants found themselves under attack by the hostile locals. Egged on by the rich American banana companies who wanted all the bananas to themselves, the Honduran government began evicting Salvadoran immigrants who had been living on the land for generations and started sending them back to El Salvador. The Salvadoran elite were furious and protested, citing moral reasons, but in reality, they were just getting a little too
I
crazy.
call them
So
nanners.
tensions were about as high as they could be, but then
El fútbol.
it's the
Vamos a jugar
1970
fútbol.
World Cup qualifiers, and both countries finished top of their qualifying table, so it was now time for them to play against each other in a series of matches. The first match took place in Honduras. The night before the game, Hondurans gathered outside the Salvadoran team's hotel, making noise and taunting them. The next day, Honduras defeated the exhausted Salvadorans with a late 90th minute goal. After the match, a young Salvadoran fan, unable to bear her country's defeat, shot herself. Disturbingly, the Salvadoran government glorified the incident.
That's
and
why they
made her
give
into
you
a
a
national hero.
warning.
And at the next game,
A
fans
warning
brought
of
pictures
what?
of her to the
Before you
stadium.
start the
Emotions
video.
were running high as the next match took place in El
Yes,
Salvador,
yes,
and this time the tables were turned. The Hondurans had to endure a sleepless night in their hotel, and the next day, before the match started, instead of the Honduran flag, the Salvadorans raised a dirty rag. So great job at reducing tensions. El Salvador won decisively over the exhausted Hondurans.
I have no
Spectators battled in the stands. Team Honduras fled
That's the
home in a
fault.
bulletproof bus with rocks being thrown at them, and the Honduran coach reportedly told his players that they were lucky they lost. In response to the defeat, Hondurans began terrorizing the Salvadoran settlers even more, in some cases reportedly throwing them off their land and burning down their homes, and the immigrants began fleeing back to El Salvador. The final game in Mexico would decide who went to the World Cup. It was close, but El Salvador came out victorious, knocking Honduras out of the tournament.
Dang.
The atmosphere is riotous, literally, and back in Honduras, attacks on the Salvadoran immigrants further increased. This was too much for El Salvador to bear. With its people under attack and an unmanageable refugee crisis on its hands, El Salvador severed all diplomatic ties with Honduras and declared war. The football war
that-
is also known as the 100
soccer.
Hours War, because
Dude,
that's
they
how long
take-
it lasted,
that.
making it one of the
Like, you know,
shortest
they
wars
suck
in
for-
history.
For serious, bro.
El Salvador
Yeah.
started by carrying out air raids on strategic locations within Honduras, including Toncontin International Airport, which prevented the Honduran Air Force from getting into the sky. Then, with their superior army, they began an invasion along two major roads, complete with light tanks
I
and
love El
infantry.
Salvador.
Yeah, one of my
Their advance
classmates
was
is from
rapid, and they were
El
quickly approaching the
Salvador.
Honduran capital.
Where we-
Then
But
the
you know what's
Organization
better?
of American States met in a bit of a panic and
Colombia.
unanimously agreed that war between El Salvador and Honduras was a bad thing and probably shouldn't continue. So they went to El Salvador and said, "Can you please stop invading?" And El Salvador declared, "Not until
No.
they stop being jerks." And so the war went on.
That's exactly what it said.
The
It said it in
Honduran Air
English,
Force
too.
finally got into the sky, and with aid
It
from
takes them
neighboring
4 days to
Nicaragua,
do
they
the war,
successfully
right?
carried out air raids
The-
on Salvadoran air bases and oil facilities,
A lot-
crippling the
there's a lot of
Salvadoran
wars we
supply
don't
line
know
and
about.
stopping their advance dead. Caught in a bit of a stalemate, the situation was no longer advantageous to El Salvador. So when the Organization of American States once again asked them to
Did you say
stop and agreed to ensure the
organization?
safety of the Salvadoran immigrants, El Salvador relented and a ceasefire was organized on the 18th of July. Then the
They should
OAS
keep
said,
that
"Can you
land."
now please withdraw your troops from Honduras? No, please, no,
Oh.
please, no, please, no. Do it or we'll sanction you." You know what? Just for you, I'll do it. So El Salvador
Goodness
pulled
to
its
their
troops out of
hearts, dude.
Honduras on the 2nd of August, and with casualties in the thousands, the war
Ooh.
was over. The economies of both nations were damaged by the war, and El Salvador didn't have the capability to take
What
care of
about
all
the
the returning
nanners?
immigrants, a crisis that eventually helped cause a civil war. The war
Then
left behind
why don't
land
you
and
just-
border disputes, some of which are
Why
still
don't you
the cause
just
of tensions
be
to this
calm
day.
about
El
soccer?
Salvador went on to play in the
Be
World Cup,
calm.
but lost every match they played and didn't make it past the group stage. So in the end, nobody achieved anything, and there
They
were
played
no winners,
Mexico. They played Mexico.
except for this guy.
Yes, USA comes out on top.
One of my
Dark
best
money.
friends is from Guatemala and Mexico.
She's from Guatemala and Mexico.
Yeah, like
Dio mio. Like one of her dad, like her one of her.
I don't
dads,
know. I
one
don't
of
know.
her
I'm
parents.
not sure. Okay.
Yeah. Well, tell them where to find you.
Find what?
This game's about to get a little bit glitched
Mm-hmm.
on Glitch Gamers, right?
Yeah.
They find you. Subscribe to this channel right now. Subscribe to the channel right now. Do it. Subscribe to this channel right now. Do it right now.
Subscribe.
No, don't listen to her. Subscribe to this channel right now. I am her father. I am telling you, be quiet, kid. Be quiet. Subscribe to this channel right now.